There is a very consequential mayoral election going on in one of the most important Jewish cities in the world. I've been asked to take a stand, and I will not endorse any candidate for mayor of Sandy Springs. But there is another mayoral race where I actually did sign a letter this past week, and I usually don't. And there's a few reasons why I don't sign these kinds of mass letters very often. One is they're kind of performative. So occasionally someone will be convinced by something that is said by one rabbi. I have never seen someone convinced by 1,000 rabbis. And more than that, I generally don't enter into that business because I do feel strongly about policy. So I often will speak about issues that are important on Israel and the safety of our community. If you've sat through enough of my sermons, you know that I think it is important that our country have sensible gun policies. You know that I am very disturbed by the dismantling of our country's public health system and the harm that it is doing to people. You know that I have feelings about the Jewish ethics of immigration. But I don't actually normally endorse candidates. So there used to be kind of a law about that. There are a couple of reasons why I don't, even so. One is you have to work with who is in charge. So I had a Zoom meeting this week with one of our two senators, so that narrows it down. I disagree with some of the stands he has taken on Israel. That still narrows it down to two. And it was a conversation about things other than that. And we had a very fruitful conversation about how precarious the status of our Jewish community is right now, about the challenges of anti-Semitism in our community. As some of you know, we recently had to close our preschool, and one of the main reasons was that the cost of securing it was simply too much to bear. And there are resources that can be brought to bear that would help us make a change there. And so we still disagree, but we can identify areas where we can work together. And the other thing is that, in general, candidates are about more than one policy, right? There is sometimes more than one thing to talk about. So why did I make a change here? Well, there are plenty of politicians who have policies that are good for the community, that are a bad community. But in this case, there is a candidate who is fundamentally opposed to a big part of what it means to many of us to be Jewish. And so look, in the book of Genesis, I mentioned this earlier, there are people who are good people who do bad things. There are bad people who do good things. Adam and Eve ate from the fruit. Okay, I'm still going to make you clothing, and I'm still going to have you populate the world. Cain, you killed Abel, but I'm going to give you a sign of protection. We have what to talk about. But sometimes you encounter someone where there really isn't an opportunity for dialogue. Sometimes it's bad enough that you have to say, I just need a flood. So after having signed that letter, I've been called racist, Islamophobic, a lot of other things. I need to state for the record, I don't have anything against Ugandans. The chief rabbi of Uganda is actually coming to visit us in 3 weeks to be our teacher, to sing with us. I hope you'll all come back. He's more entertaining than I am. It is not who you are, it is what you say. Jews and Muslims have a lot to talk about. I believe in one God, you believe in one God. You don't eat pork, we don't eat pork. Let's not eat pork together. There is a lot that we can do together. It's not who you are, it's what you say. So when someone is at best ambivalent about globalizing the Intifada, so let me be clear, Intifada means murdering Jews on buses and in cafes in Israel. Globalizing the Intifada means murdering Jews in Washington, D.C., in Colorado, and in Manchester, England. And so if someone is not full-throatedly opposed to that, that is no longer that we disagree about an issue. We now disagree about whether I have the right to exist, and I feel differently about that. Now, by the way, there are Jewish organizations that are actually very much in favor of Mamdani. And so you may ask, why would you support this candidate? And so I refer you to the story of the Tower of Babel. The story of the Tower of Babel is about a sense of enforced uniformity. So they say we are one people, we have one language, we have one belief, and we are united around building a tower. And the story goes that as they were building this tower, that choosing a brick was more important than choosing a person. That this tower, that someone would be climbing the tower, if a person fell off, oh, we can make more people. A brick fell off, oh no, it's going to take us all this time to make another brick. And so the people was subservient to the structure being built. And so there are ideologies where ultimately the demand is that you submit to that ideology even if it is not good for the people you are bringing along. And that can happen in both directions. You can vote for someone who brings in tariffs, even those tariffs are going to destroy your business. You can vote for someone even though they are going to make it so you can't afford Medicare because you're committed to an ideology. And so there are Jews who say, I'm committed to a particular kind of ideology, a particular approach, and even if that means denying an essential part of what it means to be Jewish, building this tower is more important than my own identity. Now, eventually, towers built under that principle, under that architecture, always fall, but sometimes they take a lot of people with them. I also just want to mention that the challenge with endorsing candidates or not endorsing candidates is that humans are imperfect. And that there is actually, I mentioned this when I was talking to Estella before, Ish Tamim Dorotav, that was Noah great on an absolute level, or was he the best guy you had compared to who else is around? So when I was a kid, about 30 years ago, so I actually was not a kid, I was middle-aged already, but a guy named David Duke was running for governor of Louisiana. And he was a Klan leader, a neo-Nazi, and the guy who was running against him was terrible. This guy was named Eddie Edwards. He spent about equal amount of times in the state house and in the state penitentiary. And the slogan was, vote for the crook, it's important. So sometimes it is not a question of who you like, it is a question of who else is there. So about 80 years in our country, there was a consensus that rabid anti-Semites were not going to be serious candidates for office. Yes, they would run maybe in some outlying place, but basically from World War II until recently, the consensus was that we had an understanding of the kinds of things you could say and be a candidate and the things that you couldn't. There is now, I am still trying to figure out what's going on. There's a race in Maine where one of the candidates has a Nazi tattoo, and he's like, I didn't know, but maybe, I don't even know. I can't. There's not time. But what I want to point out to you is that we are living in an age that maybe is a little bit different. That we are living in an age where it is no longer about policy, it is about identity, and that I would encourage us as Jews not to build our own Tower of Babel. That we not have some sort of litmus test for ideological purity on most issues. Jews should be able to disagree about immigration, about healthcare, about tariffs. There's a lot of issues where Jews may have good reasons and even reasons based on our tradition to believe what they believe and disagree. Sacred arguing is a big part of what it means to be Jewish. If the disagreement is not over what I believe, but whether I can be, then the tower needs to come down. And so God, at the end of the ark story, puts up a rainbow and says, I promise I'm not doing this again. So I'm not going to promise that I'm not going to do this again, but the next couple of letters that come my way, I probably won't sign because, in general, I don't think they're that useful. And in general, the next time someone comes to me and says, oh, you should totally endorse so-and-so, you should come out against so-and-so, I probably won't. I can promise that in 2028, there's one person I'm not endorsing for president. Didn't say who it was. But what I will say is this, that we as Jews need to be careful not to build our own tower, but to remember what it is to be able to talk to each other, but also to understand what it means to be able to continue to exist. Shabbat Shalom.